Okay.
All right.
Let's start with the impetus for this film. I mean, what was the seed that started you on this?
Well, I wrote it initially as a short film that I didn't end up shooting about 10 years ago, so it was a while back. And I had just discovered Philip K. Dick's books, and so I was kind of blowing through all of those. My head was just in that kind of sci-fi idea soup, I guess. And so, yeah, this thing just popped out as a little short script. And the original short, it kind of started with the voiceover that starts the movie, and then and you see the guy, kind of the looper, doing his job. And then when his older self shows up, the short was a foot chase between the two of them across the city as voiceover plays out in the young guy's head. So I wrote that thing, and it just kind of sat in a drawer for, or not in it, just sat on a hard drive for,
yeah, right. No such thing as
no drawers
stuff in the drawer
anymore.
anymore.
Drawers are dead.
That's right.
It sat in a hard drive for about 8 years or whatever, and then after Brothers Bloom, I took it out and attached some bigger themes to it and kind of expanded it out into the strange thing it became.
A good strange thing.
Oh,
it's a good strange thing. The word that's thrown a lot around you here is like, for this movie is indie approach and indie this and indie that. What I'm curious about, though, in this era we're living in which, you kind of opening weekend makes or breaks, which is insane, but it's just the way it is. What kind of line do you have to walk between sort of going that indie approach and giving people sort of the thrills and the things they need to make that opening weekend?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you definitely can't think in those terms when you're actually making the thing, I mean, it's fun to kind of look at something and analyze why this, why that. But when you're actually making it, I don't know. I mean, that's something that I've been actually thinking a lot about lately is this kind of phony line between indie, which in my mind just signifies interesting, and big, or popcorn movie or Hollywood, which is falsely used to signify, big and dumb, basically. And I think, and all my favorite filmmakers are ignoring that line. Chris Nolan or Guillermo del Toro or guys who are making huge movies that are distinctly theirs and their voice and that do interesting things and make you actually engage with them, but still give you that blast and that enjoyment of a summer movie. I mean, I think that's what I find myself seeking out for my summer movie stuff these days. I find myself bored just by empty spectacle. I want
how much CG can you take?
Yeah,
right?
I think I feel like we're hitting a level where we're all kind of super saturated with big things blowing big things up. And you can do a movie with big things blowing big things up as long as you still care about something.
Right.
Like Pacific Rim, I'm really looking forward to. That's going to be big things blowing big things up. But I know it's also going to engage me on multiple levels and be, truly entertaining, and not just spectacle.
Now, with the casting of somebody like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis, now the obvious answer is they're great actors. Okay, fine, they're great actors. But why them? And what do you feel that they kind of brought to the project?
Well, Joe, I'd stayed really good friends with since we made my first film, Brick, together a while ago. So a big part of it was just wanting to work with my friend again. But he was also specifically, and I wrote the part for him, so when I was writing the script, I had him in mind for it. And I guess the specific thing with him, though, is just he's really good, or he really enjoys and he's really good at transforming himself on film. And I knew this was a part that was going to require that on a large scale, literally putting on another actor's face. And that's the sort of thing that Joe lives for. He's got, he's a young, good-looking guy. He's got that charisma. In many ways, he's got a lot of leading man elements, but at his, what he really is a character actor, though. And that's what he really loves, is doing what people like Gary Oldman or Daniel Day-Lewis do, where they vanish entirely inside these parts. So I knew Joe would jump at the chance to do this challenging thing of becoming this younger version of this older actor. And then Bruce, first of all, it was just, he was like the first person we went to, almost like, we'll never get him, but let's give this a shot.
Right.
And he just shot back immediately, like, I'm in, let's do this.
Really?
Yeah, it was really, really quick.
That's awesome.
It was pretty cool, man. But then I was terrified because it's Bruce Willis, and
who doesn't suffer fools gladly?
Yeah. And when he's an icon, But you show up to work though, and he was just. He was so focused on all that went away the instant we got to work, and he was so focused on just doing right by the material and just jumping in and doing everything that the movie required of him. He was really, really into it. It was a pretty cool experience.
My problem is I can't look at him pick up a gun without thinking John McClane.
I know, it's tough to. Well, the thing is, but that's true though. As a filmmaker, though, part of it was you need to use that. I think you got to realize that, and you can't just ignore that when you're making a movie with him in it. And we even talked about this. I mean, part of the that's also part of why I was excited about casting him is when you see him show up, you're used to him being the hero who's going to find the right person and kill them and save the day. Right. And this movie uses the weight of those expectations back against themselves in a certain way. And so it was exciting on that level to me, too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I have this image of Joseph having to go to Bruce Willis school.
I mean, it's a correspondence school.
It's a correspondence school. You get a nice diploma at the end.
It's a UCLA extension course.
Even with, Bruce Willis gets upset when you refer to his smirk.
Yeah.
But he's got this smirk, whether he likes to say it or not, or whatever he likes to call it. And there's a moment in this thing, I think in the diner or something, where Joseph gives off the smirk.
He kind of, it's amazing because he, I think the magic trick that Joe does is he manages to create a living, breathing character. It's not, that isn't just like an impersonation of him. And I was never afraid it would be, just because Joe is a great actor and comes at things from the right direction. So, but it was kind of amazing to see it actually play out. One thing he did that I thought was really smart, Joe, he didn't look at young Bruce. He didn't study Bruce in Moonlighting or the first Die Hard. Oh. He looked at modern movies that he's done, like Sin City. And he studied him today. So he wasn't imitating young Bruce. He was creating someone you could buy as a younger version.
Who could become that guy.
Yeah, exactly, which seems like that may seem like splitting hairs, but that seemed really important and really smart to me.
Now, is this time travel thing something you're into, the whole notion of time travel, or is it just sort of just this particular story?
It was the needs of this story. I mean, I love time travel movies that do it well. I love, I love Primer. I love 12 Monkeys. Time Crimes was a really cool. You see that one? The Spanish film? Oh, it's great. It's this little Spanish movie that was it was kind of like a perfect little like Outer Limits episode. So it's worth tracking down. I love time travel movies. As a writer, it wasn't something I was particularly excited about jumping into just because it's a really tricky thing to work with and to tame. And even going into it, before I started working with it, I knew it would be. It's just this sort of thing where if you think too deeply about it, it never makes sense in the context of any movie, and that's something.
If you do this, how does this affect that?
Yeah, well, especially once you're going back in time. Once you have someone going back in time, if you look at it deeply enough, and I love getting into nitpicky conversations about movies, about that sort of thing. You got to hit a certain level with any movie, no matter how tightly it's constructed, where you just say, but if we're actually talking about what would happen, who the hell knows?
None of it makes sense, right?
Yeah,
right.
And so your job as a storyteller is, you need to come up with a set of rules that you stick consistent to, and that makes sense in the context of your story. But then beyond that, you also, to a certain degree, have to do a little, Svengali action. You have to kind of do a little misdirection. You got to do a little, a little card magic, to get the audience to, for lack of a better phrase, to trick the audience into believing for 2 hours that this is solid and this makes sense. It's a reality. So it was an interesting challenge, but it wasn't something where I was like, oh, let's do a time travel thing. It's just this setup required it. Yeah,
fair enough. I think just gave me the signal. So let me ask you this. This is for a site called Comic Book Movie. I'm wondering, are you a fan of that genre, and if so, sort of what stands out in your mind in terms of comic book movies?
I mean the first Batman, Tim Burton's first Batman. I know for fans of the comic, people tend to real purists tend to look back on that movie and maybe it doesn't reflect what they think of in terms of Batman sometimes, but that for me, because I didn't grow up reading comic books actually. I grew up loving movies that were made from comic books. The one comic book I actually got into as a kid was Groot the Wanderer. Remember that? That's the one comic I collected, and maybe I keep threatening to adapt it someday.
Funny.
Mendicant.
There you go.
But so for me, that first Batman movie was you know, I mean, obviously the Spielberg movies before that defined the blockbuster, but there was something about the cultural event that happened when that came out, and the age that I was at, and just for us in our generation, there was something about that kind of created the template for what I get excited about with superhero movies. And you know, there have been a lot of really good ones made. For me, what Nolan did with the Batman franchise is still, I mean, it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat that, you know. But I, you know, I still love superhero movies. I still love them. And I also, I mean, anime also. There's a lot of, I mean, I stole pretty openly from Katsuhiro Otomo's work, you know, especially in the back half of this movie. There's some stuff that I definitely, images that had been seared into my brain from his comic Domu, which is astounding. I think he's out of print right now, actually. It's still out of print. It was one of his early ones. Anyway.
That's it. So.
Yeah.
Should make a superhero movie.
Oh,